Welcome to the deep dive. Ever since you shared that Robert Greene book, The 48 Laws of Power,
Oh, yeah.
I gotta say, I've been hooked.
Right?
Like, it's really made me think about
It's a good way.
how power dynamics
Yeah.
work, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what's so fascinating about it. Green pulls from all these different figures.
What's crazy?
Machiavelli, Sun Tzu,
I know.
even P.T. Barnum. It's like he's saying, look, these laws, they're not just some made-up stuff. They've been around forever.
It's like a playbook, but
Exactly.
for real life.
Not just ancient history either. These laws, they apply to everything. Work, relationships, even just walking down the street.
Oh, 100%. Okay, so where do we even start with this?
Let's see. Well, Law 1, never outshine the master. That's a big one.
Okay, so tell me about that, because on the surface, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, right?
It's like, why wouldn't you want to impress the person in charge?
Exactly.
But Green's saying sometimes, it's actually smarter to lay low, not make yourself a threat.
Oh, man. Okay, so that story about Louis XIV's finance minister.
Okay, right?
Okay, yeah. He threw that huge party, tried to, like, one-up the king.
And it totally backfired.
Oh, big time. Because what he didn't get was
Yeah.
the king. He doesn't want to be outshined, especially not on his own turf.
So it's all about understanding those unspoken rules, those...
Subtleties.
Yes, the subtleties. Okay, so then how does that tie into, say, Law 22, the surrender tactic? Because that one really stood out to me too.
Yeah. Use the surrender tactic. This one's great because it shows you how appearing weak can actually be a power move.
Right, like playing possum.
Exactly. And Greene tells this amazing story about Themistocles, the Athenian general.
Oh, yeah, I remember this one. He was facing this massive Persian army.
Huge army. And everyone's telling him, you have to fight, you have to defend. But Themistocles, he's got other plans.
He's like 3 steps ahead.
Exactly.
Right.
He knows if he can lure the Persians into a trap, make them think they've won.
Exactly. And that's exactly what he does. He pretends to retreat, the Persians take the bait, and bam, Athenian victory.
It's like sometimes the most powerful move is knowing when to hold back.
100%. And, it reminds me of another law, Law 21, play a sucker to catch a sucker.
Okay, what's that one about?
It's basically saying sometimes you have to let other people think they're smarter than you.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, you play dumb, let them underestimate you.
Because they get cocky.
Exactly. And then you can use that to your advantage.
Okay, so is there like a story that illustrates this one well?
Oh, the best example.
Yeah.
The con man who sold the Eiffel Tower. Twice.
Wait, what?
Victor Lustig. He was a genius, really. He understood that people, especially when it comes to money, can be so blinded by greed.
So he used that against them.
Masterfully. He'd present himself as this bumbling government official, and people would eat it up. They thought they were getting one over on him, but really he was the one in control the whole time.
It's a good reminder that we all have blind spots, you know?
For sure. And Greene's really good at making you see those blind spots, especially when it comes to power dynamics.
And he doesn't just talk about it in like a theoretical way. He gives you all these concrete, real world examples. Okay, so we've talked about not outshining the master. We've talked about strategic surrender. We've talked about playing a sucker. What else is there?
Well, how about we dive into something a little more image-focused?
Okay, I like where this is going.
Law 25. Recreate yourself. This is all about taking control of your narrative, crafting the persona that serves your goals.
Oh, interesting. So like a personal branding thing.
Kind of, but on a much deeper level. Think Julius Caesar. He was a master of public image. Everything he did, from his speeches to his military campaigns, was carefully calculated to build this aura of greatness.
So he understood that perception is everything.
Exactly. And then you've got someone like P.T. Barnum who took it to a whole other level. He embraced the spectacle, the showmanship.
The master of hype.
Yeah, exactly. And it worked. He understood that people crave entertainment, excitement, and he gave it to them, all while building his own legend.
Okay, that's fascinating. But it makes me think, where's the line between like self-improvement and just putting on a show, you know?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And I think that's where Greene wants us to think critically. It's not about being fake, but about understanding the power of presentation.
I like that. So it's less about being someone you're not and more about like strategically highlighting certain aspects of yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it actually reminds me of another story Greene tells, Mata Hari.
Oh, yes. Classic example.
She built this whole persona around intrigue, Mystery. She was like a walking, talking enigma.
And people were captivated by it. She understood the power of mystique, of leaving people wanting more.
So again, it's about understanding how to use image to your advantage.
Absolutely. And it's not just about outward appearances either. Law 25 also emphasizes the importance of mastering the courtier's mirror.
Oh, right. That one was so interesting. What was it reflecting back to people what they want to see? Almost like being a social chameleon.
You got it. It's about being observant, picking up on those subtle cues people give off, a passing comment, a favorite book, even the way they dress, and then you subtly reflect those things back to them.
So you create this sense of connection.
Exactly. It's like you're saying, hey, I see you, I get you.
Which, let's be real, everyone wants to feel right.
Of course. It's a fundamental human need.
Yeah.
And when you can tap into that, you create a foundation for influence.
Okay, so it's like that story Greene tells about Sen no Rikyu, the Japanese tea master.
Oh, yes. The tea ceremony.
Yes. His host had secretly dug this dish to prank his guests, and Rikyu, instead of getting annoyed, he just went with it.
Because he understood the game that was being played.
Right, and in doing so, he actually earned his host's respect.
Exactly. He showed that he could be adaptable, that he wasn't going to get rattled by a little bit of unexpected chaos.
Which I'm realizing now is a recurring theme in a lot of these laws.
Absolutely. Being able to adapt, to think on your feet, that's essential when it comes to navigating power dynamics.
Yeah.
It really is, yeah. You got to be able to roll with the punches sometimes. And it makes me think of another law, Law 3. Conceal your intentions.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Keep them guessing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Greene's point is, if people don't know what you're really thinking, it's harder for them to counter your moves.
Like a poker face, but for life.
Right. And it reminds me of that story about Haile Selassie, the Ethiopian emperor.
Oh, with Balcha? Yeah, that was wild.
Right. Balcha thinks they're buddies, all chummy, but Selassie's got a whole other agenda going on behind the scenes.
Playing the long game.
Exactly. He knew that showing his hand too early would be a mistake.
So it's like you can be friendly, you can be charming, but you don't always have to show everyone what cards you're holding.
Exactly. You got to keep some things close to the vest. And this actually ties into a bigger theme in the book, which is really understanding human nature.
Oh, 100%.
Because if you understand what makes people tick, their motivations, their fears, their desires, then you can anticipate their moves.
And stay one step ahead.
Exactly. Which brings us to Law 18. Do not build fortresses to protect yourself. Isolation is dangerous.
Oh, that's a good one. I feel like so many people in positions of power, they fall into this trap.
Right. They surround themselves with yes men. They shut out any dissenting voices.
They build those walls up.
Exactly. And they think they're protecting themselves, but really they're making themselves more vulnerable.
Because they're not getting the full picture.
Exactly. They're living in an echo chamber. And Greene uses the example of Louis XIV again.
The Sun King.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He built Versailles, this incredible palace, but it also became this symbol of his isolation. And we know what happened, the French Revolution.
It's like sometimes the people in power are the last ones to see what's really going on.
Which is why it's so important to surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth, even when it's hard to hear. And speaking of hard truths, Law 33, discover each man's thumbscrew. That one's a doozy.
Okay, break that one down for me.
So Greene's point with this law is that everyone has a weakness, something they're afraid of, something they desperately want.
They're kryptonite.
Exactly. And if you can figure out what that is, you can use it to your advantage.
Now, are you saying we should all go around exploiting each other's weaknesses?
No, not at all. Greene's not advocating for manipulation or cruelty. He's just saying, be aware that these vulnerabilities exist, both in yourself and in others.
So it's more about self-preservation, understanding that not everyone is going to play fair.
Exactly. And to illustrate this point, he tells the story of Joseph Devine, the art dealer.
Oh, yeah. What was that one?
So Devine wanted to sell this incredibly valuable painting of Vermeer to Andrew Mellon.
Okay, Mellon was a big-time art collector, right?
Oh yeah, one of the biggest. But he was also incredibly shrewd, very difficult to manipulate. So what did Devine do?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
He did his research. He found out that Mellon had always dreamed of owning a Vermeer, but he thought they were impossible to get. So Devine played into that. He made it seem like this painting was practically unattainable.
Oh, so he made it a challenge?
Exactly. And guess what? It worked like a charm. Mellon was hooked. He had to have it.
The power of wanting what you can't have.
Exactly. And it's not just about material possessions either. It could be a certain status, a connection, even just someone's approval. Everyone wants something.
It's true. It's true. Okay. So we've talked about the importance of understanding human nature, of knowing people's weaknesses. But what about when it comes to like actually making decisions?
Ah, well, that's where Law 23 comes in. Concentrate your forces.
Focus your energy, right?
Exactly. Green's saying that spreading yourself too thin is a recipe for disaster. You have to identify your priorities and pour your energy into those.
It's like that saying, jack of all trades, master of none.
Exactly. And Greene uses the story of Wu Tzu, this Chinese minister, to illustrate this point.
Oh, yeah, he was trying to warn his king about something, right?
Right. Wu Tzu could see that the kingdom was expanding too quickly, getting involved in too many conflicts. He tried to advise the king to scale back, to focus on consolidating their power, but the king wouldn't listen.
He got greedy.
Exactly. And in the end, the kingdom crumbled under the weight of its own ambitions.
It's a good reminder that sometimes less is more.
100%. Sometimes you have to say no to good opportunities in order to say yes to the great ones.
Okay, so knowing when to hold back is key. But what about those times when you really do need to make a bold move?
Well, that's where Law 28 comes in. Enter action with boldness.
Fortune favors the bold, right?
Exactly. Greene uses the example of Balboa, the Spanish explorer. He didn't hesitate. When he saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time, he claimed it for Spain, right then and there.
Talk about a power move.
Right. But, and this is important, Greene also cautions against recklessness. Boldness without careful consideration can backfire.
So it's not just about being impulsive.
Exactly. There has to be a strategy behind it. And he uses the story of Pontormo, the Renaissance artist, to illustrate this point.
Okay, tell me more.
So Pontormo, incredibly talented artist, but he was also riddled with self-doubt, terrified of criticism.
That's tough in a field like art, where it's so subjective.
Right. And so what would happen is he'd start these grand projects, these really ambitious paintings, but then he'd get cold feet. He'd second-guess himself, overthink everything, and he'd never finish them.
He let his fear get in the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, despite his immense talent, he never quite achieved the level of success that he could have.
That's heartbreaking, but also, I think, so relatable, right? It's that balance between taking a risk and being paralyzed by fear.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance. You need both the courage to act and the wisdom to know when to hold back.
Yeah, it's a tough one. You need both, like you said. It's fascinating, though, how Greene uses all these stories, these examples.
It's what makes the book so good.
I know, right? It's not just like him lecturing us.
Yeah, exactly.
He shows you.
He shows you. He doesn't tell you.
Yes. Like, it's one thing to say, be strategic, but then he gives you Hail Selassie, you know?
Totally. And that makes me think of another law we haven't really touched on yet. It's Law 39, stir up waters to catch fish.
Okay, that one's interesting. Because at first, it sounds kind of chaotic, right?
It does.
Yeah.
But it's not about creating chaos for the sake of it. It's more about, recognizing those moments when things are already a little shaky.
Okay.
And then using that to your advantage.
So not necessarily creating the chaos yourself, but more like...
Riding the wave, yeah. Like, think about a fisherman. They don't just throw their line in any old spot. They look for the areas where the fish are already stirred up, feeding.
Okay, I'm with you.
So it's about being observant, seeing those opportunities where you can kind of nudge things in the direction you want them to go.
So it's like you're not necessarily the one causing the disruption, but you're using it strategically to
achieve your goals.
Exactly. Brilliant.
And it plays into this idea of indirect action, which Greene talks a lot about in the book. You don't always have to be the loudest voice in the room to have the most influence. Sometimes it's about working behind the scenes, being more strategic.
I like that. It's like in that martial arts movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
Where the master's like, use your opponent's energy against them.
Exactly. You don't always have to meet force with force. Sometimes it's about being more adaptable, more fluid.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we've talked about deception, we've talked about strategy, we've talked about understanding human nature. Is there anything else we should keep in mind when it comes to navigating these power dynamics?
Well, I think it's important to remember that power itself isn't inherently good or bad. It's just a tool.
Okay, so it's all about how you use it.
Exactly. And this brings us to Law 43. Work on the hearts and minds of others.
Because at the end of the day, it's about people, right?
Yes. You can have all the power in the world, but if you don't have people on your side, you won't get very far.
So it's about building relationships, fostering loyalty, understanding what motivates the people around you.
Absolutely. And that requires empathy. It requires understanding. It requires a genuine desire to connect with people on a human level.
It's funny because when we first started talking about the 48 laws of power, I kind of thought it was going to be this like cutthroat Machiavellian thing.
Oh, I know, right? It's got that reputation.
But really, it's so much more nuanced than that.
100%. Greene even says it himself. These laws, they're not a guarantee of success, and they're definitely not an excuse to be ruthless or unethical.
It's more about awareness, right? Like understanding the game that's being played so that you can make informed decisions.
Exactly. And that's why I love that final law, Law 48, assume formlessness.
Ooh, that one's good. Tell me more about that.
So the idea is you don't want to get so stuck in your ways, so attached to one particular strategy, that you become inflexible.
Because the world's constantly changing.
Exactly. You have to be able to adapt, to evolve. It's like water. It can flow around obstacles, over them, under them. It's always finding a way.
So it's about being adaptable, being open to new ideas, new approaches.
Exactly. And that, I think, is the ultimate key to mastering power, the ability to constantly learn and grow.
Wow. So as we wrap up here, if there was just one thing you could leave our listeners with, one takeaway from the 48 laws of power, what would it be?
That's a tough one. But I think it would be this. Power is a responsibility.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an incredible conversation. I feel like I need to go back and reread the book now.
He too. It's one of those books you can revisit again and again.
Totally. And on that note, listeners, we'll leave you with this. Pay attention to the power dynamics at play in your own lives, whether it's at work, at home, or even just in your everyday interactions. See if you can spot any of these laws in action. You might be surprised by what you discover. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.